Hello and welcome to the Confidence Academy podcast. My name is Lily Badcock and I am a transformational confidence coach and founder of the Confidence Academy Members Club, helping men and women just like you to build unshakable confidence and self-belief. Each week, I will be bringing you new episodes with advice and guidance to help you rebuild lost confidence, manage anxiety, and finally start living the life you were born to live. It is my aim to reach as many people as possible with the message that no matter what you're going through, no matter what your struggle may be, there is hope. And there is a way to create an amazing life for yourself. The incredible people I have been blessed to interview on the show are walking, talking examples of how this is possible. And I truly hope you will find their stories uplifting, inspiring, and motivational. The conversations are very open and candid and occasionally may include some adult language, so please take care when listening around little ones or grab some headphones. This podcast series is brought to you in association with Lily Badcock Confidence Coaching and the Confidence Academy Members Club. If you are ready to make the shift from anxious and frustrated to calm and confident, then visit www.lilybadcock.com today and get started with the free resources that are waiting there for you. I need you to know that you're not alone, that it can and will get easier, and that the transformation you seek is possible. You are more powerful than you know, and I'm here to teach you everything I know about harnessing that power and creating an amazing life on your terms. Before we dive in, don't forget to leave a review for us on iTunes and to check out the links in the podcast notes to the free resources we have available for you. But for now, let's get you on your way to living your epic life, free of anxiety and full of confidence. After all, confidence is yours as soon as you choose it. Hello and welcome back for another episode of the Confidence Academy podcast. And today I am joined by the amazing Leah Steele. Leah, welcome to my podcast.
Thank you very much.
So Leah is a mentor for professional exhausted women, and actually you call yourself the secret weapon for the working woman. Is that right?
That's right, yeah.
Awesome. So I'm not going to waffle on too much at this point. I will definitely waffle on at some point, I'm sure. But for now, I'm going to let you introduce yourself fully and explain exactly what that means, what you do for people, how you help them, and how you came to do this work in the first place.
Absolutely. Thank you for that. So, as you said, my name's Leah. I call myself a variety of things, and that's because I tend to wear a lot of hats. I think we can probably all relate to the idea of spinning 50 plates at once and trying to keep it all going and not crashing to the floor. But that's exactly where I came from. So my background, I started out at a very young age having this real drive to become a lawyer. Most of us decide at a young age that we want to be something. I'd gone through vet, I'd gone through ballerina, despite never having had a ballet class. I'd given up on trying to get to the moon because it seemed like a really far away place. But at a young age, I became fixated on this idea of becoming a lawyer. And it was kind of crazy, like most things that I do, because I grew up in a family where nobody in my family had ever been to university. No, I didn't know any lawyers. The first time I met a lawyer was when my parents were divorcing, which is when I decided I wanted to become a lawyer. And it was very much, looking back, it was very much me kind of clinging on to something that seemed really secure and really stable and just all the things that my childhood wasn't. I grew up in a very crazy kind of life. And I could get into that. That's at least like 20 episodes of the podcast right there.
We'll do it. We'll bring it to the people.
Leah's childhood trauma, the episode 1, 2, 10, 15, 20. But yeah, so I decided very, very young to become a lawyer. And that was the big goal. And that was the only goal in my life. So my life was all mapped out all the way up to the whopping age of 22. So I did all the things. I was working part-time whilst I was studying. I was, did my A-levels. I went to university. I was working. I was actually financially supporting my mum while studying at uni, working part-time, did my postgrad, or nothing stopped me. At that point, you could have told me I had no chance whatsoever. I was not going to be able to make it and I should just give up now. And my response would have been to stick two fingers up and to carry on. I was beyond resilient. And I used to refer to myself very much as like a rubber ball. I just bounce off of stuff. Stuff would happen, throw me at the wall, I'll bounce back, it's fine. And that was the way that I was. And looking back, it feels really tough. But I just kept going. You know, mantras were, you know, are you dead yet? Keep going. You know, nobody's died yet, so just keep going. Oh, they're already dead, so let's keep going. That kind of thing. And so I just kept going. And I ended up working as a lawyer. It was a really, really tough climb. And I had a longer path than most to becoming that lawyer. But I was so fixated on it. And this is something that when I look back now, I realize, oh, that was probably not that healthy. I had this one goal, no matter what, I was going to achieve it. It didn't matter what you threw in my path, I was just going to knock it down, keep going. And it meant that I was working, you know, in the path to becoming a qualified lawyer. I spent 5 or 6 years working as what they call a paralegal. So a non-qualified lawyer that gets paid a hell of a lot less, usually, than a solicitor or a barrister, definitely. So I was doing that and working second and third jobs to keep a roof over my head or to help my mum out or just to try and live the life that I thought I was supposed to live. And shockingly, having gone through all of that, I burned out. I've been qualified for 3-4 years. I'd qualified quite late, so I'd hit 30. And I went through a series of traumas that just left me literally one day on the floor crying. And I couldn't get back up. Now I tell it like it was some big, you know, oh my God, the world, you know, the house burnt down with me in it kind of thing. The thing you have to know about me is I'm very polite, despite swearing. And I'm very probably middle class in the way that I deal with these things. So I say I crashed and burned. To anybody who didn't know me very well, it looked like I was still just functioning. It was fine. Mm-hmm. But what people didn't know is I was not sleeping. This is my 3rd coffee of the day because I've got a headache, but I would drink 3 coffees before 9 a.m. I always had a venti latte attached to my hand. I didn't sleep. I had really bad anxiety. I was really quite depressed. I would just sit and cry for apparently no reason. And it just all came crashing down. My mum died the December after I turned 30, quite suddenly. And it kind of changed everything for me, as it does for a lot of people. But I still didn't know how to make changes. I was very much in this is what you do. You get up, you go to work, you work 12 hours a day, you come home, you keep going, and that's what you do. You just keep going. And I didn't know how to change that. So a couple of years ago, I started working with a coach because I thought, I just want to be my own boss. I can become a lawyer and be my own boss and it's all fine. Mm-hmm. And actually, as I started getting deeper into, probably for the first time since I was 9, what it was I loved, what I enjoyed, what I was naturally good at, I realised law I was okay at. I was pretty good at. I think I'd have to say for the people who used to pay me £200 an hour that I was pretty damn good. But it wasn't my zone of genius, as we call it, my zone of excellence even. I was good, but it wasn't the thing that lit my soul on fire. And the more that I paid attention to what was going on, the more I realised I was learning all of these things. I was making all of these changes to my life so that I wasn't working in a way that was killing me. And other people were kind of looking at me going, what are you doing? What's changing? You don't look quite so, you know, zombie-ish under the eyes, or you're not crying in the toilets. What's going on? And this is where Searching for Serenity, my business, evolved from, because I just realized that the more that I spoke up about struggling, the more open I was that, hey, this is not all perfect. And actually it might look good, but I'm really unhappy right now. The more that other people felt able to do the same. And that's something that's become a driving force over the last couple of years. And has evolved to the point where, you know, I have my own business. I work with women on really all the things that make us unhappy at work. So starting with confidence or simple tricks like gratitude to really improve your mood, but then getting in deeper and going, well, why is it that we do this? Why do we feel the need to keep the world turning single-handedly? Why do we feel the need to struggle? And that's exactly where my absolute zone of genius comes into play, because I can
Awesome.
see it. I've lived it and I can see it.
And like so many of my guests, in fact, all of my guests, your passion has come from the fact that you've lived this yourself. And I think you'll probably agree, as we've all realized, that as difficult as the struggle was, and as much as it absolutely sucked balls at the time, you can see when you look back how this was exactly the path you needed to be on in order to bring you to this place where you are now able to step into your true calling and your passion, and obviously bring to the world the thing that you were born to bring.
Yeah.
So thank you so much for sharing that story. I know it's going to resonate with everyone, actually, because, you know, the topic of this, I was going to say live stream, but it's a podcast. The topic of this podcast is feeling insecure and lacking confidence at work. But I actually think, you know, it's going to help anyone who feels insecure and who lacks confidence, because the principles are the same, whether you're feeling like that at work, whether you're feeling like that as a parent. I mean, I know I'm a new mum. Obviously, I've got a 7-week-old baby sat here in front of me who thankfully has just fallen asleep by some sheer miracle. I'm going to say I manifested that, but yeah, I'm not. I just think she's calling all the shots. She's just being nice to me. But certainly, you know, and my anxiety came as a result of having my children earlier on, and doing exactly that thing you said about trying to have it all together all the time.
Yeah.
I wasn't prepared to let anybody know that I found it difficult or that I was struggling in even the slightest way. And I don't know why I did that. I don't know if I thought I was getting some kind of medal or certificate, or if I thought it made me, I don't know, if it validated me somehow. I just think so many of us think this. And I don't know, I can't speak for men because I am not one, but I definitely know a lot of women who feel this way. And it's that motherly role. It's that, you know, even if you're not a mother, it's still that, you know, strong woman kind of thing. And, you know, obviously we've had, you know, loads of people through the years that have shown themselves to be very strong, and, you know, someone to listen to, somebody to watch. And I think as inspiring as those people can be, it can instill this belief in you that you have to be the same 100% of the time. Yeah. And I think what we miss is, you know, even those women, I'm talking about women like Oprah, you know, that we like to follow, and, you know, very, very strong women. Even those women will have had times where it wasn't easy for them and it didn't come easy, and they needed to stop and take care of themselves. And that would have been the case. And I just think it comes down to perception, which I think I must say that on every single episode. But I'm not going to apologize for being boring, because I think it's so important. And when you realize the power of perception of a situation, and actually, you know, and especially in this day and age where we're on social media all of the time, and we're constantly scrolling through, you know, polished pictures of people looking uber happy and, you know, and everything's right. It can make you feel like you're failing when you look at your own life and you think, oh God, you know, mine isn't like that. I don't get to do that thing, or, you know, that isn't my reality. But, you know, I had some advice once, which was, don't compare your back end to somebody else's front end. And I'm not talking about asses. Just the fact that, you know, if you look at any business as an example, you know, you'll go into, I mean, let's talk about Virgin Airlines, right? When you walk up to a Virgin Airlines desk, it's all very pristine. The person sat behind the desk is very groomed and very beautiful, and the whole experience is very luxurious and gorgeous. For sure, there's some shit going on in the background that we don't see. They don't portray that because it's the front of house. Like, they don't need to show us that, but it is there. And I think that's the point for human beings as well. It isn't just businesses, it's human beings. And no matter what we see, no matter what you see around you and what you are perceiving to be truth, just know that, you know, you don't know the full story. And if you're struggling in any way, you can bet your bottom dollar that the next person is also struggling in some way. That's not to say that, you know, that we're mean and that we revel in the idea that everyone is struggling. I just think it's nice to know you're not alone, and it's nice to know that you don't have to measure up in that way. So what you're doing is so vital and so important. And like I said, it's definitely going to resonate for the working woman, but I think it's going to resonate for anybody listening who has ever felt like they had to hold all their shit together and they didn't know how. So my first question for you, and as I've said a million times on this podcast, this is very conversational. So I'm sure this question is going to bring more questions as we go through. But the first question I wanted to ask was slightly aside from what you're doing, actually, but I think it's important to ask it. When you realized that you were going to go in a different direction career-wise, how difficult was it for you to do that? Because when you're training, I think for anybody who thinks they're going one way and then realizes they've got to go in another direction or something's going to change, that's going to be jarring for them. But for something like a lawyer, where you've invested so much time, so much energy, I'm guessing money as well, then how hard was it for you to do that? And how did you get to the point where you were able to say, but I have to do this?
If you can hear any funny noises, that was me sitting cross-legged on the chair, because this is it. We are getting into it, so I'm cross-legged.
Oh my God, she means business. I love that. I'm going to lean back on I might even have a recline in my recliner for this.
My goodness. Now you're just showing off.
I might tip my baby out of her seat though, so maybe I won't. But anyway.
It's 50-50. You've got to go for your comfort first and foremost, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, like I said, I fixed on the idea of being a lawyer I can almost remember the date. It was around the 5th of November 1993, because that was the day that I was in this lawyer's office, and I was sitting there looking at these high back chairs that they still had 10 years later when I did work experience with them, and looking at the papers and the dust, because wherever there's papers, there's always dust. And it was such a clear image in my mind of what I was going to do, that I think a huge part of it was actually the mindset around it. So I came from a very regulated, rigid, in both positive and negative senses world. I came from a and actually this is something that I picked up on when you were saying just now about, other women who have had to sort of stop and take stock. I think we live in a really interesting time right now, because you even take the last 30 years and how much has changed for women in that time. When I was a kid 30 years ago, my mum worked part-time. Well, she worked 3 jobs part-time, but the expectation was there was always going to be a mum at home, and there was the expectation that men earned more still, and it was just becoming, the female shoulder pads, power suits, 80 greed is good kind of thing. And yet now it's just so different for my friends who have young children. There is an expectation they will be back to work within 6 months, and that they will be back to work at least 3 days a week, and that all these different things. So it has changed so massively. And I think whenever you have a group of people in a situation, we have this idea of societal norms, whether it's at work or at home, or whether it's, mums or dads or whatever it is. We have this ideal that we try to aspire to. And if we feel that we come short in any way, which every single one of us does, because what we think we're aspiring to is the gold, platinum, diamond studded standard. As soon as we feel like we're, not meeting it in some way, we start turning inwards on it. And that was a huge thing for me, because there was me going, okay, I've qualified, which, a good number of people that sat out on this path don't do. Shouldn't I just be grateful for what I've got? Shouldn't this be enough? And then there was this part of me going, but I know it doesn't make me happy. The area of law that I was working in is a very emotive area. You need to be incredibly resilient for it. And I was one of, at that point, relatively few women working in a very niche area that has since exploded. And it was really difficult for me to get my head around the idea of doing something that wasn't a tick box path. I spent a long time looking at, how to become a psychologist or a psychiatrist, or how to cross-qualify into something else, because with the world that I come from, unless you have a certificate, you couldn't do it. Mm-hmm. And obviously I'm constantly studying, I'm constantly growing. I have a massive background in psychology research, from a a personal perspective. But I don't have a certificate that says Leah can mentor people. I have a shit ton of experience instead. And so for me, that was really confusing to get my head around that. Yes, you know, there's a massive financial investment in becoming a lawyer. There was a massive emotional investment. And it was a big ego thing as well for a very long time. I was that person who I lectured other lawyers on what I did. And I would often be one of the youngest lawyers in the room. And I'd be at the front telling them how to do it or how to refer to me to do it. And not just in one area, but the area of law I was in, it actually reaches back centuries. I would be on the phone with counsel and they'd be like, yes, you know, you're absolutely right. Apart from this precedent from this case that's only reported in one book that's now out of print, and the case was from 18, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, oh, you know, yeah, it's really intellectual. It's really stimulating on that level. And I'm standing up, I'm traveling around the country giving talks to people about how to deal with this thing. And then there I was, an absolute nobody with a Facebook page going, hi, I know what I'm doing. You know, without a certificate, without a room of people to stand up in front of, your ego does a massive one on you. And there was so many times the first 6 months where I was like, I'm just stupid. I should just jack this in. I'm done. This is ridiculous. What am I even thinking about? And it was when I first started working with clients, I had a couple of people in particular who were just there every time I went live. And, you know, one person signed up for an hour intensive with me, which was £20 back then. My prices have gone up massively since then. My first £20 in business, I was like, this is a business. I've made money. I've given advice to somebody who then came back and bought from me again and again, and is still one of my clients now. And so it was this snowball effect, and I wasn't used to that. I'd gone through it before in law, but it's very different when you're then starting all over again. I'm feeling like, my God, what am I going to do? How am I ever going to climb this mountain?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, you know, so many people seem to be having this thing now where, and I don't know if it's an age thing. I don't know if you get to like your 30s or your 40s, because I've just tipped into that bracket now. And if it's that suddenly makes you look at everything and go, okay, what am I actually doing? And is this where I want to be? Or whether it's only a handful of us, I really don't know. But it's definitely something I'm seeing more of. Certainly the people that are around me, more people are getting the confidence, at least a little bit, to go, actually, maybe I don't have to stay stuck in this job that doesn't light me up. Maybe I get to live my purpose as well. So I think, you know, I think that's really important as well. And I think maybe a lot of the anxiety and a lot of the stress and a lot of the lack of confidence comes from the fact that they're not doing their purpose work in the first place. I do think that's a real thing. It certainly was the case for me. I'm not saying that that's where everybody's anxiety comes from. That was the case for me. And it seems to be the case for a lot of people I work with. And I'm not saying, by the way, that if you're listening to this, you have to go and quit the job that you've trained for 100 years and go and do something else. I'm not saying that at all. I'm just saying, if you're feeling unfulfilled in any area of your life, then dare to dream a little bit bigger, dare to think outside the box, and dare to, you know, just like Leah did, just because you'd followed this path of being a lawyer and going to uni and getting your qualifications and tick, 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 tick. Just because you've done that, it doesn't mean you have to do it for the rest of your life if it doesn't feel aligned for you. Yeah. So it takes massive balls to do that, though, by the way. So kudos to you, in case you've never given yourself the kudos. That takes huge gazonkas to do that. And now you are...
There, though. Can I just... Because you just said you're seeing more people around you who are saying, oh, maybe I don't have to do this. And actually... just as you're saying to me, it takes huge balls to do what I did. You need to also remember that by you standing up and going, this is what I'm going to do, and this goes for both of us, but you in particular, standing up and saying, this is what I'm going to do, you actually give other people permission to look up from the ground that they're treading on and go, oh, hold on, there's more to this. Yeah. And I think a huge part of this, the more that each of us says, this doesn't have to be that way. If it's good for you, that's great. But if it's not, remember there is another way.
Yeah.
That's when you give other people permission to do it. And it's this ripple effect that goes out. You know, you're the pebble in the pond. And when you see other people around you doing it, often that's because either somebody else has triggered you to do it and you're spreading that out, or you have instigated that in somebody else. You've allowed that to come to fruition in somebody else. So, you know, for every single one of us who just stands up and says, do you know what, this thing's a bit crap, really, I'm not sure I love this, you give permission to so many people around you to just flourish. So.
Yeah. And actually this podcast began just like that, because I don't even know if I was listening to a podcast, because I don't even think I really knew what a podcast was, to be fair. I'd heard the word and I knew it was something I could get on my iPad, but other than that, I had no idea. And then this one day I just suddenly was like, do you know what? I reckon I could do that. Like, I reckon I could do that. Let me give it a shot. And I mean, now I haven't looked, but I think we are almost, if not there, with 50,000 downloads on this podcast. And it's not just that, it's the fact that people from all around the world get to hear me and whoever I have on as a guest. That blows my mind. When I go into the account and I look at the countries that this podcast is heard in, it's mind-blowing. I mean, I kind of thought that America would get it because, you know, we're kind of very ingrained here in the UK. Like, we love American culture a lot of the time, and a lot of their TV shows are on our TV. And so I figured I would get people from the States, and I figured I would probably get a few people from Australia. As it turns out, one of my biggest pools of people following me are from Australia, which I just find insane because the time difference is so vast. But, you know, there are people in like far-flung places like Bora Bora and, like, you know, like the most unusual places. I think there are a load of places where there's one listener, which I just found really funny. I think there's like one in China. So out of the whole of China, one Chinese person has gone, that Lily Badcock, her podcast looks like something I need to get involved with, and they've listened. I just find that amazing. Yeah. But no, you're right. And yeah, I think that's the point. And I actually wrote a post about this earlier, and I wrote to somebody specifically about this. This person was in a Facebook group that I'm in. They posted up because they've been writing their book for the last few years, and their post in essence basically said, I'm scared to continue writing my book because now I worry that it isn't mine anymore. I worry that someone else has got this download, and it's a very woo-woo Facebook group, by the way. So there's a lot of talk of channeling and you know, following purpose and all of that. But she said, you know, what if this isn't my thing anymore? What if I miss the boat? And what if it's somebody else's baby now? And what if I'm flogging a dead horse? Like, what do I do? And, you know, loads of people went on and said, you know, no, absolutely carry on with it if it feels good to do. And what I said to her was, you know, what if Richard Branson had allowed his fear to get the better of him? What if Oprah had allowed her horrendous start in life to dictate the rest of her life? I just think, you know, it's what you've said already. Just because something has happened to a point, it doesn't have to continue. And this is something I see so much in this industry of mental health, specifically with anxiety and depression. There are so many people who were given a label once that they feel like they have to live by that now. It's almost like, oh, I would love to do X, Y, and Z. Oh, but I can't because I have anxiety. Or, oh, I can't do that because I have depression. Or I can't do that because I suffer from stress. And whilst I get that there are times where you would feel like that is true, it's actually not true. It's utter bollocks. It's just the belief program that's running currently. And so when Leah says you don't have to stay stuck, you really don't have to stay stuck. And if you're listening to this going, oh, well, that doesn't apply to me, then if that's your truth for today, fine. But just think about the fact that maybe tomorrow you can wake up and go, but what if that could be my reality? And maybe just for fun, play that out as well. Just grab a journal and write it down and be like, okay, even if I don't believe on any level that this is possible, what if it was, and what would I do? And then see what happens, because I think even that sparks inspiration and it sparks energy. And then you start to go, I mean, I bet you did this. I bet when you first had that little spark of, oh, maybe I could teach other people what I've learned, I bet there was a ton of fear and a ton of reasons why you probably shouldn't and all the rest of it. But something about that energy just keeps pulling you back to it. And I just think once you've woken that beast, you can't shut it down. It'll just keep coming back. It can lie dormant for years, but I think ultimately it's going to come back around, and it's a choice in the end. You either take the risk and you go for it, or you stay on the ledge and you don't leap. I'm a huge fan of leaping, mostly.
It always is a matter of perception. Yeah, leaping, so long as you know that you're safe when you land, or that you feel safe to take that leap. I mean, you talk about taking that leap, and actually, two things came up for me again. It's always two things with me, by the way. I think I'm naturally kind of bipolar or something, or multiple personalities going on, because I always have two comments.
No, it's good. You've got 2 eyes, 2 ears, 2 boobs, 2 feet. It's all good. It's all good. Totally normal.
Yeah, so two things that came up there was, one was actually when you were talking about the labels that we apply. I have this story that I share a lot with my community, because I do talk openly about the fact that I have struggled with anxiety, I've struggled with depression, and I say struggled with because I don't apply them as a label to me, as in they are a part of my personality. I kind of feel like they are challenges that come up. Mm-hmm. The same as I've struggled with grief, or I've struggled with money, or those kind of things. I try and keep it very separate from who I am as a person,
right?
I don't want to say I have this and therefore it means that for me. I think it just colors the situation for me. But when I kind of crashed, as I say, when I was sitting on the floor crying, I was signed off sick from work. It was 6 months after I'd lost my mum. I hadn't taken a break. I'd had about 2 weeks of bereavement leave over Christmas, by the way, and gone straight back to work, working with the recently bereaved. I mean, if you want to take an example of somebody smacking themselves in the face day after day, I was it. And I was signed off work because I was ill, I had a virus, I was crying. I was just a mess. I was a big, snotty, tired, exhausted mess. And so we went with viral illness because I didn't want to say anxiety and depression on my certificate, because it didn't feel quite right. It was a bit of everything. But I spoke to a recruitment consultant at that point. I decided I needed to make a change. I needed to stop commuting for 3 hours a day. And the recruiter said, oh, you didn't put anxiety and depression on your sick certificate, did you? Because you'll never work again if that's on your records. And I went, well, my response was pretty blue. I was like, are you kidding me? You can't, one, that's not true. Two, anybody who discounted me would be immediately discriminating against me and would have a lawsuit on their hands, because hello, I'm a lawyer.
Yeah, I know stuff.
I don't need this crap right now. I was so vulnerable at that point, and somebody coming in and voicing my worst fears, which were completely shitty anyway. It was just so destructive, and I ended up in a position that I would never have taken, but for how vulnerable I felt, and that somebody was then voicing my fears. So that was the first thing that came up. But the second thing that led on from that is, that was that point, right? Sorry, if you can hear grumbling, my dog is expressing his dissatisfaction with my language, I think. Doesn't like me swearing, it's quite funny. How he ended up my dog, I don't know. But the second thing was that you talk about taking the leap, and sometimes the leap feels terrifyingly big, and sometimes the leap is just keeping going. I started my business not long after that conversation. A few months later, I started working with somebody about building a business. Within a year, I was fully operational. But I also did that whilst I was working full-time plus as a lawyer. I did that whilst also running a second business. I make and sell jewelry as well. Plus, I had a dog that I hadn't had before my mum passed away, because he was hers. I had all these things going on. I was grief riddled, and sometimes taking the leap just meant having faith in myself that I could get through the day, having faith that I could just do one thing, just share one little quote on Facebook into my page, and that would be okay. That would be enough. And the rules, the what felt good to me changed every single day depending on my mood, and having faith that that was okay. But I would always push myself outside my comfort zone. That was enough. It actually took me nearly a year from setting up my business to quitting my job, and going full time in my business, because of exactly that. Sometimes you need that support. Sometimes you need a framework, and that's okay too.
Yeah.
It's not going to be one way or another.
Yeah. I think that's important as well. It's that statement of it's okay. Like, whatever you feel like you need to do, that's okay. Like, there is no process you must follow. Even if you saw that it worked for somebody else, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's the exact path for you. And I think this comes back to tuning into your own intuition, tuning into your own inner voice. You know these things. I had a message from someone the other day who was trying to make a decision, and they were like, oh, I'm really torn. I don't know whether to go with option A or option B. And I think my response was probably really unhelpful to them at the time. But I was like, no, you do know. And the way you know, by the way, if you're ever in that situation where you think, oh, I don't know if I should go A or B, imagine somebody has just rung you up and told you that option B, for example, is no longer on the table. And how does that make you feel? And this is what I did with this person. I just said, well, okay, then let's just say that isn't even happening now. How do you feel about that? And she was like, oh no, I feel a bit bad. I'm like, right, so then that's the thing to go for. Your intuition knows, your conscious mind is a hot mess of fear and anxiety, and it will be influenced by whatever it sees around it. But we all have the inner voice, the inner ing, Gabrielle Bernstein refers to it as. It's that inner ing, that inner knowing. You do know what's right. And, loads of people I've spoken to who have worked through difficult situations, in hindsight can say that they knew it was wrong at the time. They just didn't want to admit it, or they knew it was wrong at the time, but they didn't know how to not be in the struggle. I think that's so vitally important to recognize. It's sometimes we keep ourselves stuck in struggle because we don't know who we are without it. Because like you said, you said that you try and keep your anxiety separate from you and that it doesn't define you. But for so many people, it is their identity. It's like, oh, I'm not Lily, the confidence coach, or I'm not Lily, the singer. I'm Lily, the one with anxiety. And, so many people carry that around, whether they verbalize it or whether it's just like a little unconscious, cheeky belief that sits under the surface. Regardless of what it is, if it's there, that's going to affect how you act and how you think you can handle situations. And when it comes to taking risks, or when it comes to doing something that's a little bit outside of the box, that would then cause you to believe that maybe that's not for you. And this is something I uncovered. Ironically, I'm a frigging confidence coach. I'm supposed to be really good at this stuff, and yet I realized only last year actually that I had this underlying belief that I 100% believe, and still believe, I can help anyone to transform who's ready to transform. But attached to that belief was a little side note for myself, which said, but not you though. It was like, Lily, you can change everybody's life, but not you. Everybody gets to thrive, but not you. Everybody gets to overcome their anxiety, but not you. Everybody else gets to make money, but not you. And I had this but not you thing that I didn't even realize was a thing until I dug it out in journaling, and then was like, haha, there you are, you little pesky thing, keeping me stuck. Like, what the friggin' hell's that all about? Because on a conscious level, I was like, no, me too, completely. In fact, consciously, I always believed that I had to do it for myself first before I could even help anybody else. So it just goes to show that what you're thinking consciously and what's going on under the surface doesn't always match. But you can be very, very sure that the thing calling the shots is what's going on under that surface, which is why this, time to tune in, whether that's meditation or whether you just go for a walk or whether you open a journal. Or for me, I find a lot of it comes out when I listen to music. So certain music just relaxes me, I think, to a point where I allow thoughts to flow. And that's when I suddenly have these little realizations. Sometimes I have you know, what I think are really good ideas. And other times it's more like, oh, that thing you were struggling with, like, this is why, or this is where it comes from. And as soon as you've identified that, it's not about then going on an epic 10-year journey of trying to decide why you ever felt like that. Sometimes it's just simple enough to go, oh, okay, well, I thought that once, I don't think that now, and I'm done. Cross it out. In fact, I've physically been known to do that in my journal. I'll write out what the fear is, and then I'll just cross it out and be like, it's not a thing anymore. And if it wants to continue being a thing, that's fine. I can just keep crossing it out because I have that choice. So it's all very good stuff. I want to just get back. I wrote down a couple of questions. So for anyone who resonates with your story, what would you say is the starting point? So somebody's listened to this episode today and they're like, oh God, like that's completely me. I resonate with everything she said, or a lot of what she said, and I know I need to make a change, but oh my God, how overwhelming is that? And where do I even begin? What would your advice to that person be?
Okay, so for that person who is aware that they're exhausted, is aware that what they're doing is not supporting them. I think I use the phrase slapping myself in the face, probably, or beating myself up. Beating yourself up is the classic one. It can be a really tricky time when you realize that, because with this personality type, with people like me who are very driven, very ambitious, very hard on themselves, the first thing that you do is notice this and then go, oh my God, you're so stupid. Oh my God, how could you not realize you were doing it? And then it just loops back in, right? Beat yourself up for having realized you'd beaten yourself up and not realized it before. You know, there is something deep in there, I think. But the first step is to really allow yourself to know that when you speak to other people, sometimes you get to be safe. And to find that one person, whoever it is, whether it's a sibling or a friend or your parent or your best friend in the world, or the person that you never see, or whether it's me or someone in a Facebook group or you or whoever it might be, to find someone that you trust and to start talking, because that's when it suddenly starts to unleash. You know, I spent a very, very long time, whenever somebody would ask me how I was, and you can see me on video, but flipping my hair over my shoulder, going, yeah, I'm fine. I'm fine. Oh, I'm just so busy. I'm tired because I'm just doing so much at work. Yeah, I've got to go.
It's so important.
Yeah, and it was, I was a complete cow about it as well, because I felt so horrible that I would kind of need to tell other people how important I was. And I noticed this one coming up again recently. This week, I was feeling really vulnerable, because you say you're a confidence coach and you realize this stuff. There's always more. There's always more. You know, and when you're talking very much with my clients about, you know, exhaustion at work and pushing ourselves until we drop, and double, triple, quadruple, whatever 5 triple is, checking what you're doing, not allowing other people to do it because you don't trust them, because they're not you, they're not going to do it as well as you, all these things. When you first start looking at that, you realize that actually the layers underneath it are allowing yourself to be vulnerable, allowing yourself to make mistakes, not thinking that I've screwed this one thing up, therefore I'm a terrible person. No, we all have to make mistakes in order to learn and grow. And actually realizing that that's part of the process. It's a massive mindset shift from the perfectionism that my clients have. And so just allowing yourself that time and that space to talk to somebody, to be around other people who are maybe going through similar things, just to allow that awareness to rise. Because you can leap straight into it and go, right, I'm going to get to the bottom of this, I'm going to get all my childhood traumas out, and blah, 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 blah. For most of us, we don't have time for that. We are very busy. We do have a lot going on. And so it's very much for me about finding a way forward that isn't as destructive as the one you're used to, and becoming more aware of some of the more destructive patterns, not to go and root them out and search them all out and beat them and burn them and all that kind of stuff, but just to become more aware. It's very gentle, really. and to allow yourself to think, it doesn't have to be this way.
Yeah.
Just to have that awareness. Those are the places that I started, being around other people who were disillusioned with their work, or loved aspects of it but were disillusioned with parts of it, the way that they worked or the times that they worked or the commutes and things like that. And just allowing yourself to be aware that you don't have to do that. I'm fine. And, you know, telling everybody how wonderful and busy and important you are to make up for the fact that you feel like crap. That you don't have to do that all the time. And that it's okay to say, these things aren't great. I love this part of my life, but this bit I want to change. That's what the power is.
Yeah, absolutely. And I want to also address the people listening, because I'm the same type as you, I think, in that, I don't know, I always struggle with the word perfectionist, because in some ways I think I am a perfectionist, but in other ways I'm really not. I'm so blasé and laid back about other things that I don't really know. I think maybe I've got like two types of personality mulched into one for myself. But I definitely can resonate with that, that idea of it has to be this way because that's the way I decided it. And, you know, it's quite hard when you realize that something's going to come along and shake that. So to anyone listening who maybe does resonate with what you're saying and maybe suspects that they might be struggling in this way, but in the next moment is dismissing it and going, well, there's absolutely no way I could ever quit my job, or there's absolutely no way I could ever get off this treadmill that I'm on. What do you want to say to those people? Because I know, I remember being there myself where I felt very stuck in certain elements of my life. And I thought I was getting away with it because I was making changes where I felt like I could, but I wasn't actually changing the things that needed to change. So these people who, like me, for a while thought, oh, well, no, there's no way I could change that, you know, because you can literally change any part if you choose to. So what do you want to say to those people who think it's a nice idea, but, you know, think it can't be for them?
I actually respond to it usually with a question, which is, okay, so how long do you think you can keep going the way you are?
Yeah.
And that's when things start to break, either because people become aware that they can't keep going the way they are, or they throw things at my head because they're not happy with that. It can go either way, and it can be confronting. But if you're sitting there thinking, I don't like this, or this isn't making me happy, but I couldn't possibly change it, then you've got to remember it's your responsibility. It's your choice. You're choosing that. And for every person that says to me, I don't have a choice, my response is always, yes, you do. You're choosing not to choose. That's fine. There are ways and means in every situation. Trust me, I'm a lawyer. I'm very good at finding them out, right? I say I'm a lawyer. I'm not practicing anymore. It's still my personality. There are always ways and means. And for the people who are struggling and who are just becoming aware that maybe this isn't the way it was meant to be, maybe this isn't the way you want to live your life, then I just want to say that you're stronger than you think, you're more resilient than you know, and to trust yourself. If that voice is telling you, maybe this isn't working, then maybe listen to it. You don't have to fix the world, you don't have to do it overnight, but listen and ask. Because that's, if you fix it already, if it could be perfect with everything you knew, you'd done it already. Because none of us are stupid. None of us are willfully messing everything up. I don't believe that people choose to destroy things. I think we get stuck on paths. We get fixated on the way things have to be, just like I did when I was 9. I'm going to be a lawyer. That's it. Done. And just trusting yourself and becoming more in touch with that inner voice that is perhaps telling you, maybe this isn't the way it has to be. That's always the way forward. That's always the thing to trust, because you've realised already you're not going to be able to switch that off.
And this seems to lead us very beautifully into the final question, which is what I ask everybody, which is, if you had a megaphone and the ability to reach every anxiety sufferer in the world, and specifically these burnt out, exhausted, awesome Wonder Women who are trying to spin all their plates at once, what's the inspiring message that you want to leave these people with today?
The thing that's coming through me right now, mine changes every 5 minutes. But the thing that's coming through me right now is you don't have to beat yourself up. You deserve to be supported and you deserve to be happy. Mm-hmm. Don't ever forget that.
Yeah. I would write that down and stick it on a mirror or somewhere, because it's so important. And I think as well, I can even see myself, like the old me from a few years back, rolling my eyes at a statement like that and going, yeah. But it's actually true. It is actually true. And here's another little thing I want to add on to that as well. You are going to keep going. You are going to keep moving forward. Even if you're slamming on every brake you can get your hands on and you're digging your heels in and you're resisting, you will move forward, and you just do. This is the human experience. And so something I like to tell myself whenever I recognize that I'm getting into this habit again of resisting or, fear-based thinking where I think I can't do something, I remind myself that I'm probably going to figure it out eventually anyway. So why not just do it now? Like, why, because in hindsight, I think, oh, yeah, exactly. It's like, oh, I knew this 5 years ago and I resisted for 5 years and then I eventually gave in. Well, what if you just gave in now? Like, what if you just said, okay. And actually, this goes back to the podcast again, when the podcast came about because I was coming towards the end of a year where I hadn't achieved this big shift that I was waiting for. And I was starting to beat myself up, and I was literally getting into the mindset of, really, another year's going to come by and you're going to say all the same crap that you said the year before, and you're going to write out your stupid little, New Year's resolutions, and then you're not going to do them. Like, really, are we here again? And I had that realization in that moment, which was whenever the shift happens, it's just going to be in a second, in a minute, in an hour, in a day, in a month, in a year. It's not going to take any longer than a second just to go, and now it's different. And it's everything that comes from that. And I realized that I was waiting for this big explosive, fanfares and angels landing, playing their harps and, God knows what. And actually the shift probably already happened. You probably already shifted. And now you just take these little tentative steps in a slightly new direction. It just takes one step in a slightly different direction to completely change everything. If you're stuck anywhere right now, just know that it just takes that moment, that one step, and you can suddenly get a little further down the road and realize that in that moment was when everything changed. And it's more like a hindsight thing. It's not likely to be obvious at the time. Yeah. So just remind yourself that you're going to get there. You're going to be okay. You are okay. And maybe just choose to have the shift now. Say, okay, well, I could struggle for another year, or maybe I could just do something different today. Whether that means you download a book that you haven't read before, whether you get in the Facebook group and talk to Leah and ask her about the episode that we've just done. Whatever you do, if it's something slightly different to anything you've done before, that's your shift. That's it. And it comes with no fanfare. It comes with no announcement. And it's so easy to miss. It comes back to perception, doesn't it? It's, the shift probably already happened, but did you see it? I think that's the thing.
Yeah, I mean, you can never connect the dots moving forward. You can only ever look back and say, that was a moment that changed things. But the other thing that is that if I could do it working full-time, setting up a business, doing it, if you can do it, with a 7-week-old in front of you, anybody can do it. And we all sit there and go, cross our arms and go, it's all right for you. It's all right for you because blah, 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 blah. I can't do that. Yeah, you can. You can. Yeah. We're living embodiment of that.
I think you can if you want to, and you don't have to. It's perfectly fine to stay where you are. For me, and for you clearly, that just wasn't enough. If you're listening to this and and you're just a little bit itchy about that idea that I just can't stay stuck where I am, then follow that. Start with that. It's like Leah said, you can connect the dots going backwards. Know that if you need the answers, you're going to get them, just probably not right now and not in advance. You're going to realize it, in hindsight. Awesome stuff. I just want to make sure that I covered everything. Yeah, I think we did. It was amazing. If people want to, I've just mentioned the Facebook groups. Obviously, I'm going to add you up in the Facebook group. Anyone who's an avid listener of the podcast will know that you can carry the conversation on over in the Confidence Academy podcast Facebook group. I still didn't change the name of that. It's way too long, but you get what I mean. You can jump in over there. I'm going to add Leah in. You can connect with any of the guest experts. So, even if you're just a new listener now, if you go and listen to old episodes, they're all hanging out in there. You can tag them in, you can tag me in, get your questions answered. Leah, if somebody wants to contact you directly or find out more about the work that you're doing, how would they find you and how would they do that?
They can find me either through Facebook, which is facebook.com/Serenity Search, which is all one word, searching for serenity.co.uk. Or even come and find me on LinkedIn. My Leah Steele, I'm on LinkedIn, and I'm usually sharing my blogs over there as well, disrupting a few corporate types.
I love it. Oh, yeah, because that's obviously where a lot of your clients are. I'm guessing it's these people in the corporate world. And I think specifically because I know people that are either in that world or have been in that world, it's the belief that you're stuck there once you're there is rife. It's, the people who break out are seen to be some kind of superhero or aliens, like, oh, that's not the norm. But I want to say, I see it changing. I think you're going to become very busy over the next 6 to 12 months because more and more people are realizing that, life is happening to them now. It's not a dress rehearsal. And they can choose something different. They don't need to struggle. So as always, I'll put all of those links into the show notes. If you want to connect with Leah, please do. Reach out. Like she said, just start talking to somebody, whether it's Leah, whether it's me, whether it's someone you know, or whether it just means that you open a journal and start pouring your heart out onto the pages. Get that energy moving, get it flowing, get it releasing, because that's how you see, you take that one step and then the next step will appear in front of you, and it's having faith that that's going to happen. Awesome. Leah, thank you so much for joining me on the podcast this week. It's been gorgeous to have you here. Leah and I actually hang out in a couple of Facebook groups, so we've been chatting for a long time, and I see her name all the time, but this is the first time that I've seen your face. So it's really nice to see you face to face, and thank you so much for being a guest today. Thank you. And to everybody listening, thank you for joining me. And remember, you can say it with me now. You know what I'm going to say. Confidence is yours as soon as you choose it. Thanks for tuning in. I'll be back soon with another episode. Massive love.
And that's us done for another episode. I hope you are now feeling uplifted, inspired and motivated, and ready to start making those positive changes starting today. If you loved this episode and would like to connect with me or any of my amazing guests, then get on over to the Facebook group and join the conversation there. And for additional support and accountability, why not become a member of the Confidence Academy Members Club? You will find all of the relevant links in the show notes beneath this episode. In the meantime, I'll be back again soon with another new episode and more amazing guest experts. But until then, look after yourself, dream big and live bigger. And remember, confidence is yours as soon as you choose it.